It's always showtime at BetMGM Sports. You can make your first bet risk-free up to $1,000 when you sign up with the code Sherdog. Don't let another game day go by without having the ultimate sports betting app in the palm of your hand. Discover non-stop excitement with BetMGM's state-of-the-art technology and dozens of betting options, including live wagers, props, parlays, and much more. No matter what your favourite sport is or how you like to wager, find out why there's nothing like getting a W at the king of sportsbooks. Use the code Sherdog and make your first bet risk-free up to $1,000. Download the BetMGM app and sign up today. Visit BetMGM.com for terms and conditions. 21 years of age or older to wager. Arizona, Colorado, Washington, D.C., Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, Louisiana, Michigan, Mississippi, New Jersey, Nevada, New York, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, or Wyoming only. New customer offer. All promotions are subject to qualification and eligibility requirements. Rewards issued as non-withdrawable free bets or site credit. Free bets expire in 7 days from issuance. Excludes Michigan disassociated persons. Please gamble responsibly. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP in Arizona, 1-800-522-4700 in Colorado, Washington, D.C., Louisiana, Nevada, Wyoming, and Virginia. Call 1-800-270-7117 for confidential help. In Michigan, 1-800-GAMBLER. In Illinois, Indiana, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia, or 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa. In New York, call 8778-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY to 467-369. In Tennessee, call the Red Line at 800-889-9789. In Mississippi, call 1-888-777-9696. Sports betting is void where prohibited. Promotional offers not available in Nevada. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Sheehan Show here on Sherdog.com, and it's Bellator 280 we're going to be previewing today as the world's second biggest MMA promotion returns to Europe for a couple of cards here. Obviously, they're in Paris this weekend, and they go to London. They'll probably have a few cards in America then and be back again in September in Ireland. You know, there's a big gap between those, obviously, so maybe they'll have a good few cards in between that. But it's an interesting card this weekend. Obviously, the heavyweight title fight is in the main event, and a few other big fights on the card as well. Next week's card, similarly, you know, we have the interim welterweight title fight on it, and you know, some of their best English prospects and ranked fighters like Fabian Edwards against Lyoto Machida obviously is on that card as well, and many others. So an interesting time for Bellator, and interesting to get to watch cards at normal times. So I think I speak for everyone in Europe when I say good fair play to you, Bellator. Let's do this. Let's keep these European cards going. You know, the UFC is coming back to London as well. Let's forget about America altogether. Mind these North American cards. Let's just have them all. Paris, I'm perfectly fine with. Maybe, you know, I get us a few in maybe, you know, Dublin, Amsterdam. Don't mind these American cards anymore. They'd be absolutely fantastic. But I think it is one place where Bellator has really won over the UFC, especially kind of in the UK and Ireland. And now you can add, I suppose, France into that as well, considering, what is this, their third or fourth event? I don't know. They've done a few events anyway. Maybe it's only the second. But they've done events in Paris. And, you know, they did Italy as well, obviously, during the pandemic. And, you know, the fact that Ireland now has had its third card already since they've kind of started coming back, or the third card is due, whereas the UFC have gone to London, and now they're going to London again, and that's kind of it. You know, they talked during the pandemic all the time about the UFC. We'll be the first back doing shows, and they really haven't been. You know, they're the only ones still doing shows in the Apex. I heard Ariel speaking about it this week, and I spoke about it obviously here and on the over in Severe MMA as well. That it's very odd. I mean, look, we know why the UFC are doing it, obviously for financial reasons and things like that. But you know, Dana White talked about world domination, and if you want world domination, you need to go around the world, and they're not doing that. And I think Bellator have enjoyed that. They've signed lots of the best up and coming Irish and British fighters, because they're coming here and because they need them to fill the local cards, and they're getting them before the UFC get them, and I'm sure they're doing the same with France now as well. And there's lots of French names on this undercard that we'll be seeing at the weekend, and obviously a Frenchman topping the card as well with Cheick Kongo fighting for the heavyweight title. A couple of the names, I suppose, that people will be looking out for on this card and on the undercards. Yves Landu is one that kind of sticks out to me. He had a great performance the last time out against against Terry Brazier when he hit him with that big knock. Actually, he's fought Tim Wilde against that, and he lost the decision. My apologies. But when he did fight Terry Brazier, it was one of the knockouts of the year, in 2020. And he is definitely one to look forward to. He's fighting Gavin Hughes, who, I went back and watched a few of his fights, and he's strong. He's a good wrestler, but other than that, I don't think he's the best striker in the world, to be honest. I would fancy if it did stay on the feet. Landu is very kind of elusive, and he throws his big shots, and I think he can get the knockout if it stays on the feet. But I think if the fight goes to the ground, I think Hughes will have an advantage there. So he's one of the names there, and I don't know why I picked him out, but he's just one that stands out to me that could be in a potentially exciting fight here. The undercard is filled with French names: Victor Vercher versus Boubacar Kamara, Matthew Leto against Youssef Cabayas. You see Lucy Berthaud is there against Katarinza Sadura, Joel Jaduza. Actually, I think that fight is off the Nicholas Scatozzi fight, but we have Fabakar Diatta against Jordan Barton, who's been around the scene for a while, and two guys who've been around the scene for a long time, Thibault Gouti, is taking on Lu Long in the undercard here as well in a welterweight matchup. And Gouti is he's won 3 in a row now. Beat Mehdi Baghdad, who we would know from Tough back in the day. He fought Sage Narcot in the UFC as well. People probably remember that, Nazareth Akprast, as well as a few others. He had one win in the UFC against Andrew Holbrook, but other than that, he lost to Timo Packlin, Aubin Mercier, Chad Laprise as well. And, this is a big opportunity, I suppose, for him to get back here and get back to winning ways on a bigger promotion. He fought in War of Titans and French Fighting Championship and Trophy de Etoile 15 before this. So, as I said, the opportunities when you're coming back to France to get French fighters on it are very big, and it's great to see. And the fact that they're there before the UFC as well means they will get first dibs. Whereas look at Lu Long, then his opponent, he's fought now the last 2 fights in Bellator, but he had a few more before that as well. Actually, he's fought his last 4 fights in the UFC, but we know him, I suppose, best. A lot of people would from his days in Cage Warriors, where he fought against Shea Mills, and he lost to Roberto Soldic, but he fought even on the local scene, he fought Ryan Scope before that as well, and he fought Tommy Quinn, who fought recently in KSW, an Irish stalwart, I suppose, who's been around for a long time. Fought Paul Redmond as well, who we know from Cage Warriors, KSW, Bellator, the UFC, and all different promotions. So Lu Long is a good guy, and it's good to see him getting a good opportunity here and a good fight as well on this undercard. It'd be interesting. I'm very interested to see Mike Shipman coming back. He's fighting Gregory Babene. I watched a few of Babene's fights. A lightning striker is what the first thing I saw about him, but he also loves a takedown as well, and he's one of these guys that kind of hides his ability to wrestle with his striking. Very good bottom game as well. I watched one of his fights, he won by a triangle, and he got it there really, really quickly. So a guy definitely to be excited about, I think, but he's gone in there against Mike Shipman, who is not an easy guy to beat whatsoever. He's 14-3 now in his career. Beat Pedro Panini last time out in the Euro Series. That was back in 2020. That very close decision against Fabian Edwards. Before that, the split decision where he kind of, he wasn't too happy after that one, but I think at the time it was the right decision. He lost to Cancelo Van Steenis as well, but he had some very good wins before that. He beat Carl Noon, he beat Yannick Bahati, beat Craig White over in the local scene on UC MMA. So he's definitely a very well-rounded fighter, and I think it's maybe moving time for Mike Shipman at this stage of his career. I mentioned he fought Edwards, like Edwards was fighting Machida now. He fought Cancelo Van Steenis, who's gone on, he beat Fabian Edwards after that, and he hasn't fought since. He was supposed to fight Lorenz Larkin, but that fight fell out, and I don't know, maybe he's injured or something, but it's a big opportunity here for Mike Shipman and Babacar as well. It's an interesting fight. It's a very interesting fight. What I'm most interested in that is to see where kind of Shipman is at this stage of his career, and to see what kind of a fight that'll actually be. Standout for me though on the undercard, Pedro Carvalho against Piotr Niedzielski. A very, very, very interesting fight from watching both guys. I obviously, Pedro Carvalho straight out of SPG here in Ireland, he's been on the local scene for a long time and been in Bellator obviously for a long time as well. I think he's one of these guys that's underrated, honestly. He came out in his last fight and he fought in Ireland, and he emerged to me as one of the stars from that card. A lot of obviously the Irish guys lost and stuff, but he went in there and he beat Daniel Weichel, and everyone knows Daniel Weichel, over 50 fights, been around the scene for a long, long time, and he beat him by unanimous decision. And it was coming off of 2 losses for Pedro Carvalho. Lost to JJ Wilson, lost to Patricio Pitbull, obviously after a very, very good run, beating the likes of Daniel Crawford and Derek Campos and Sam Cecilia. And there was talks at one stage here, and I know a few people said it, like, is he the best current active fighter fighting out of Ireland? And I think at one point you could definitely argue that, and his win against Daniel, with McGregor away and everything, but you could, and we know he'll be in Gary and a few more as well, so there's an argument to be made, but he's up there. He's definitely one of them, I think. This Piotr Niedzielski fight is so interesting. Niedzielski has a great guillotine, is the first thing I look at his highlights. I look at some of his fights. He comes forward like Pedro Carvalho. He has vicious ground and pound when he gets the fight to the ground. So I think this one is one of those fights that will be fought in the middle, and whoever can win that battle in the middle, I think, will win the fight. We often hear that. I don't think it's not that often that it's true, the way fighters fight these days, and they can fight in a multitude of different ways. And not to say these guys can't fight in a multitude of ways, but I think they both fight at their best when they're going forward, when they're landing those shots or landing the big takedowns like Niedzielski tends to land. And Carvalho, we've seen him in fights, that Sam Cecilia fight especially, just puts on an almighty pace and kind of drowns you in that pace. And if he can do that to Niedzielski, it will be a very, very good performance, because I was talking to Graham in our preview this week over in Severe and May about it, and he was kind of saying this is it's almost it's not necessarily a lose-lose fight for Carvalho, but it's close to that, because you win this fight and people are saying, okay, you beat a guy that no one's ever heard of, even though if you look at him and go and watch these fights, this guy is very, very good. And if you lose to a guy no one's ever heard of. Now, people should have heard of him, and if they haven't heard of him, they should be going watching him, because, as I said, he is very good. So it's an interesting one for Pedro. Like, this has happened a couple of times as well on these Bellator cards. Like, Brian Moore got that fight over in Russia a week before the Irish card, ended up losing it, and then wasn't on the Irish card, and it was, he got on the second Irish card that came back as well, but it just felt like the planning was a little bit off with that one. The fact that Pedro Carvalho, a guy who fought the guys I just mentioned, JJ Wilson, Patricio Pitbull, he's a name there. He gave a great interview after the last card. He looked like a guy who was, a bit of a star, and now he's buried on the prelims. And I know he's, he's not from France, and we understand. I was giving out about this the last time in Ireland, so maybe I need to understand what's happening here. But there are some fights, I think, higher up the card that could probably be a little bit lower down and bring this up a little bit. All in all, it doesn't matter. But this to me is fight at night written all over. I think this will be the best fight on the card. I think it's a phenomenal fight between two very good guys, and if you haven't heard of Piotr Niedzielski's name, which I'm probably butchering, you probably will have hear about it after this weekend, because he's very, very good. Very, very good. Let's run through some of the other fights. I mentioned obviously Shipman against Gregory Babene. That looks like it's topping the prelims. I mean, I actually have the card here. Let me just pull it up. Do you know what? I just got the updated card actually, because the Scioli fight fell out, and that Carvalho versus Niedzielski fight is actually now headlining the prelims. So that's very good. And that makes a lot of sense. It was down further, and on an earlier card it was further down. So that's a very good thing to be doing. Having said that though, Soren versus Charlie Leary is further down the card, and I don't know if that makes sense. I'll read the card to you from bottom to top. So opening the card, Victor Vercheria against Burmar Kamara. Yusuf is fighting Matthew Duckloss. Lucy Bertreau against Caterenza Sadura. Yves Landu against Gavin Hughes. Yeah, I like that as an undercard fight, to be honest. You'll either have a big knockout from Landu, or you'll have 15 minutes of wrestling maybe from Hughes. Maybe you'll have something else. Maybe there's something I missed there. But then you have Back versus Leary. I love that fight though. You have Diate against Jordan Barton, Lulong against Thibault Gouti, and then Carvalho versus Niedzielski topping the prelims, which I'm glad it got that spot. The Shipman fight then opens up the main card against Gregory Babene. Lorenz Larkin against Kyle Stewart. Davy Gallon against Benjamin Brande. Yoel Romero against Alex Polizzi. We'll get to that in a second, obviously. And in the main event, Pedro versus Kongo. So I mentioned that Soren versus Charlie Leary fight. That's a fight I'm really, really looking forward to, because you look at Soren over the last while, coming out as a Cage Warriors champion, beating Morgan Charrier after beating Paddy Pimblett in these last two Cage Warriors fights. He needs some very good wins before that as well. Beat Scott Glist and beat Martin Stapleton and Alexander Jacobson. So some very good wins. Then came over unanimous decision against Terry Brazier, unanimous decision against Bobby Lee, and maybe was obviously supposed to fight Saul Rogers as well. That fight fell out, but maybe he hasn't got maybe the push in Bellator that maybe a lot of people thought he would get. Coming over with such a profile maybe from Cage Warriors. And the Charlie Leary fight, I think, is a good fight. The fact though that Charlie Leary is coming off that loss to Davy Gallon at Bellator Dublin, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it was indeed. He beat Kiefer Crosby before that in a fantastic performance. The doctor stoppage at the end of the first round, but he has had a bit of an iffy record. He lost to Tim Wilde, beat Chris Bungard, lost to Paul Redmond, beat Tom Gray. Every kind of second fight he's winning and losing. But I really like Charlie Leary. I think he's a wonderful fighter, honestly. And the record maybe doesn't suggest that, or the winning and losing every second one. But I think he'll put it up to Soren in lots of different ways, especially if it's a striking matchup. Now, I think on the ground, Soren might have a little bit of an advantage. We'll see. And he's like, Back is a guy. He doesn't look at. I interviewed him once. I was at a media day where one of the other my colleagues interviewed him. And he's one of these guys, you kind of look at him and you think maybe he isn't the strongest looking guy in the world. He's kind of wiry looking. But then he gets into the cage and he grabs onto lads and he pulls them down and he can hit hard as well. Just a very, very well-rounded fighter in all areas, and you would be well-rounded if you were good in all areas, wouldn't you be? All right, yeah, I suppose. But I'm really looking forward to seeing that one and seeing how it goes. I think if Back wins that fight, I think 15-1 now in that division. As I said, he hasn't got that big name yet. Even this one, fighting Charlie Leary. After coming off of a loss, and it's at a catch weight as well. I don't know, and he's fighting obviously up at 115 pounds as well, having fought at 145 pounds in Cage Warriors and being the champion there, but he was fighting at 155 pounds as well in the the double champion in Cage Warriors, as we all know. But I don't know which division he wants to fight at in Bellator, but I would love. I don't know if Kiefer Crosby's gone back to Bellator or not, but I would love to see that fight if it was possibly put on. Maybe even him versus someone like Quealy. I know Quealy's fighting Vincent Henderson coming up, but I think there's some good matchups in that division. Give him a good 155 and see where we go from there. But I think, look, Charlie Leary, is a good first step. But I think he needs a bigger name and a bit of a push in that division to see where he's going, to be honest. You know, the higher up then you go on the card, Lorenz Larkin versus Kyle Stewart. Interesting fight. Watching some of Kyle Stewart's fights, he's very tough, I suppose is the first thing you'd say about him. Throws a hard right hand over the top and down through the middle, and he loves to clinch as well. Which honestly, against Lorenz Larkin, I don't know, does that make for an unbelievable fight, if I'm being honest. You see Larkin sometimes, and he comes out and he has these great fights, you know, but then you see him other times and it is against the fence, and maybe one big left hand is landed, maybe something big happened, like the Paul Daly fight. It was halfway through the second round almost before a punch landed, and then it was that big left hand that landed and he was gonzo. But you know, his fights after that, he obviously won the decision against Fernando Gonzalez, won the decision against Ian Pascu, won the decision against Koreshkov, won the decision against Keita Nakamura, won the decision against Rafael Carvalho. So, you know, when he came over from the UFC after beating Masvidal and Magny in a row, that's crazy, the fact that they signed him off of that. Then lost to Lima and Daly. You know, the Koreshkov fight, absolutely, but that was back in 2019. Fought Carvalho in the summer of last year. Rafael Carvalho even, and coming back against Kyle Stewart, it's not a fight that I maybe expected to see. You know, this kind of fight is maybe coming from nowhere as a fighting over in Paris. It's kind of a bizarre fight for the card, but look, I think Lorenz Larkin, maybe this is the sort of fight that he needs to come back and maybe win well on the feet. He's been around for a long time now. He's 35 years of age, has what, you know, coming up on 30 fights. He has 30 fights actually, and I think it's a moving fight for him, really, because you actually see it a lot recently since kind of the pandemic. You know, the acute phase, I think, as they're calling it, has passed. You see a lot of fighters kind of coming back now, and they haven't fought once in the last 3 years, and they're you know, and he has had a few cancelled bouts as well, don't get me wrong. But when you come back, right, and you've maybe had 1 to 2 fights in the last 2.5, 3 years, you come back and you have another fight against maybe someone who isn't going to push you forward or isn't a big name. And maybe it's the right thing to do considering you haven't fought that much. But also, you aren't moving yourself forward at the rate that you probably would have wanted to be. So there's another kind of 6 months, not necessarily down the drain, but another 6 months of waiting. And okay, he's fought once against Rafael Carvalho since the end of 2019. That is a long time for someone like Lorenz Larkin. I know, I don't know, maybe there was injuries or something in there as well, but he was booked against 2 different people on this card, and that, you know, it didn't materialise. But this is one that has materialised, and it could turn into a tough matchup if Kyle Stewart can get a few takedowns, if he can wrestle with him a bit. I see a lot of this fight being in the clinch, honestly, and I think if Larkin can avoid that right hand and get his striking going, I think he can win it there. But yeah, all in all, I don't expect it to be a classic, to be honest. Another one I honestly don't expect to be a classic is Yoel Romero versus Alex Polizzi. Obviously Yoel was supposed to fight against Melvin Manhoef, and I did a little bit of a preview of that in one of the shows before, and I kind of talked myself into getting excited by it just because of the clash of styles. Romero versus Polizzi, though, Polizzi is very different, I think. Like I just watched 2 or 3 fights of Polizzi's there before I started doing this, obviously after getting the late notice call that he's in. Not I don't know how to put this. I watched his fight against Julius Angliskas. Not exactly the most quickest in the world, the most quickest, not exactly the quickest, maybe not the biggest fast twitch movement like we would say with someone like Yoel Romero. He throws leg kicks. Honestly, if he threw a leg kick here in Limerick, you'd see it coming for Landon Dublin. Like, just seems so slow, and he was at that stage as well fighting up at 205 as he is now. I think he'd be more of a middleweight, but he's big, strong, big muscular guy. I don't know, does he use that strength too well either? Seems like his striking is a bit slow, and you know, for Yoel Romero, it's an interesting test because Yoel is getting on now at this stage. He's 45 years of age. lost his last 3 fights in a row. He's only fought once in Bellator since he signed up there against Phil Davis in a boring split decision. Phil Davis in a boring split decision? Never. And then before that, it was the boring fight against Adesanya, and then the boring fight. Well, the Costa fight was good. Wait, hold on, I take it back. But it just feels like it's a bit of movement time now. He's supposed to fight Uriah Hall in the UFC. He's supposed to fight Anthony Johnson in Bellator. Those fights fell out. The Melvin Manhoef fight fell out. And this Polizzi fight, I don't know how I actually see this going. I was trying to think about it, and it's hard not to see a Yoel Romero fight in your head and see Yoel Romero trying to fly a knee in the third round and knocking a lad out, I just feel like he needs to up the pace a little bit against someone like Polizzi. Now, maybe I was a little bit remiss and I didn't mention it at the start. Polizzi's a very good wrestler, and I mentioned his strength. He can take guys down. And look, Yoel has been taken down by guys just because he was an unbelievable Olympic wrestler. I don't know how well that has actually translated, or he has want to make it translate to mixed martial arts. And he's not a guy who can't be taken down, honestly. But he's usually very good from scrambles, and people usually don't even try to take him down. So when they do, maybe it's he's caught a little bit unawares. But I think Polizzi should try to take him down, honestly. And I think Yoel Romero needs to put on an extra bit of pace. Obviously, the big issue with Yoel, he's afraid of gassing out and he doesn't want to go hell for leather from the very start. But I think he needs to throw a little bit more against Polizzi, and if he does, I think he'll win early. I don't know what the game plan is going to be. If that is the game plan, I think it'll be successful. If it's not, the longer this fight goes, the more boring it could be. I'm not getting people excited for this card, am I really at all? No, some of these fights, look, some of these fights, they could be really good. I'm being honest here, it's just my opinion. I might be 100% wrong, all of them could be blowouts. But even me saying, some of them could be blowouts, maybe not. If Yoel comes out throwing shots at the very start and Polizzi, is throwing back a few of his own, he can hit as well, It could be an exciting fight, same with the Larkin fight, but it's just that clash of styles, especially with the Polizzi-Yoel Romero fight. I'm not really sure how it'll actually meld, because Polizzi does come forward and throws in the pocket and doesn't really get out of the pocket all that well. So, what's Yoel going to do? Just let him do that and not hit him back? I think he needs to hit him back. I think he does need to hit him back and see where it goes from there. But yeah, all in all, I'm not sure about it. Not sure about it, honestly. Right. The main event then, Ryan Bader versus Cheick Kongo. We saw this fight before. Bader was kind of winning the fight. He was taking Kongo down, landing a few shots. It ended by that, what was it? It was an eye poke or a no contest, something happened anyway, and it was an eye poke, wasn't it? Look, if you look at Ryan Bader's last few fights, they have been, it was an eye poke on the ground, yeah. They have been good and bad. The Moldavsky fight, very good, after I kind of written him off a little bit. The Machida fight, he won that, but looked, I thought, very slow. The Corey Anderson fight, he got knocked out in 51 seconds, but I didn't think he looked great in that. And the Nimkov fight in back at the end of 2020, Bader's had a good few fights in the pandemic time. He lost that as well in the second round and looked a bit slow on that. I remember in the Moldavsky fight, he went 5 full rounds in that fight. I remember saying that his family should be feeding him Kit Kats and Mountain Dew and full fat Coca-Cola and all of that, because he's a way better heavyweight in 2022 than he is a light heavyweight, just because of the necessity for athleticism, I suppose, at 205, whether it's not as necessary at heavyweight. I thought Moldavsky would win that fight against Bader, but Bader was just kind of a better athlete and was able to stay away from him, and his chin held up well enough as well. Against Kongo, it's going to be very interesting. Kongo has been beating lots of people recently. Well, when I say recently, probably over the last 6 or 7 years, since he's gone to Bellator with wrestling, And as we saw in the first fight, Bader is a better wrestler than Kongo, and I don't think Kongo is going to beat Bader with wrestling. So that leaves a very tough conundrum, I suppose, for Cheick Kongo. What's he going to do? Is he going to go out and try to strike with Bader? I think at this stage, He may as well. I think he might as well go out and try to throw a few big shots and try to knock him out, because I think like, Kongo's a very fast and athletic guy. We've seen him down through the years when he has had to look at that Pat Barry fight. He's fast and he can throw shots. A little bit Arlovsky, even the last day, you know, and I mentioned it coming into that fight in the preview, that guys like that at heavyweight, why they're still able to do it so late into their 40s, is because they're so much more athletic than everyone else. Like, I can, as one of myself, I can say there's a lot of fat heavyweights going around that are not that athletic and not that quick, whereas they've always been very athletic and very quick, and even if they aren't the best fighters in the world, that quickness and athleticism can actually see them through. He's fighting Ryan Bader here, though, who I've just said, in fairness, that he isn't as quick and maybe isn't as athletic looking as he once was, and I think it's hard to disagree with that watching his last few fights. But is it enough? You know, we've seen the Moldavsky fight that it still holds up at heavyweight, and he can still do it at heavyweight. Is that going to be enough for Kongo? I just don't think so. I don't think so. Now I've been writing off Ryan Bader, honestly. So I'm kind of drawing that back in, and you have to after we saw the evidence of the Moldavsky fight. But I think Bader will take him down here. I think Kongo's going to find it hard. His hometown behind him. I think Bader will probably end up finishing him in the first few rounds. But all in all, look, I think it'll be a good battle. I think either it'll be Bader taking him down, landing a lot of shots, or Kongo trying to land a lot of shots on the feet and stopping the takedown. So either way, it's unless Kongo takes him down and lays on top of him for the whole night, I think it's going to be a good fight. So I'll leave you with a bit of positivity on this card anyway, and we'll see where it goes. And look, isn't it great for the French fans to be able to see mixed martial arts in their country, and long may it continue. All right, everyone, I will leave it there. Hope you enjoyed that. Let me know your picks down below. Who do you think is going to win the main event? Is it going to be Kongo? Is it going to be Bader? Do you see Polizzi maybe getting in there and landing a few shots in Yoel Romero? Let me know what you think in the comment section here on YouTube, on Spotify, or wherever else you are. Thanks to everyone for watching. I really appreciate it. My name is Sheehan for Sherdog.com, and I'll see you all next time.